In this video, I'm going to go over how to write Essay 4, which is on transitions. So the prompt in the syllabus reads, life, like writing, is filled with transitions that are marked. Graduations, weddings, first jobs, new jobs, confirmation or membership into a church body, etc. Choose one such life transition and explain why you believe it is important to mark this transition. You should craft a thesis, and you should think of the directive, quote, to explain why you believe it is important to mark this transition as the essence for your supporting argument and plan of development. So this statement is the most important because this is what you must prove in your paper. Now, you're not limited to the list of life events that's given up here. You may create your own life event, maybe the birth of a child or the passing of a loved one would be something you would choose. So to brainstorm for this paper, I'm going to lead you through a series of questions, and we're going to pause multiple times. So first of all, I want you to come up with a list of events in your life that have brought significant transition or that have marked transition. So go ahead, pause the video, and come back when you've come up with the list. So now that you have your list of moments of transition, choose one event. I recommend not choosing one that's overly emotional. And then what I want you to do now is think about, how did this event change you? So maybe take a few minutes and write a before and after picture of yourself, comparing yourself to before this event happened versus after. So what I want you to do is focus on how this event changed you. And the change may not be very great, but noticing what the change was will help you articulate why marking this transition is important. So pause the video and come back. All right, what I want you to do now is explain how this event was marked. Was it with a big public ceremony, or was it more internal and private? So explain how this event was noticed and recognized by yourself or by others. So take a few minutes and describe this event. Imagine doing it for someone who was not there to witness it, so you really have to put in some detail. All right, pause the video, do that paragraph, and then come back. All right, lastly, I want you to just articulate for yourself, why was marking this event important to yourself or to others? And this will kind of help you with the purpose of your paper a bit. So pause the video and come back. All right, next, I'm going to help you write the thesis for your paper and come up with the reasons. So for a simple thesis, you can say a blank life event is an important transition to recognize in life because of blank. So list 3 reasons why you think recognizing that transition is important, and you may draw on your own personal experience. So once you've come up with your 3 reasons, review your reasons and make sure your reasons clearly explain why you believe it is important to mark this transition. So this is not a biography paper. This is not you narrating the story of the life event that changed you. This is you explaining why marking this type of event is important. All right, so consider your audience for this paper a little too. Maybe you're writing this for someone who's younger, who you're giving advice to. Maybe you're writing this for someone who doesn't understand the importance of the event, maybe like a non-Christian, and you're explaining why baptism is important. Or maybe you're writing this to someone to encourage them, maybe to complete their schooling to reach that graduation day. So those are some ideas, but you may come up with your own audience. But just remember, the teacher is never your audience for an academic paper. All right, the parts of an essay. You all know that an academic essay has to have an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and the conclusion. So for your introduction, make sure you're using one of the introduction approaches we talked about last week in Chapter 6 of our textbook. Make sure to include your thesis and to have a plan of development that explains what you will be talking about in the next 3 paragraphs of your paper. So for those paragraphs, you need a clear topic sentence, that each paragraph focuses on one idea, has support, and that you explain the support in each paragraph. And then for this week, because we've been focusing on transitions, make sure you have a transition between each paragraph and transitions between your examples or your ideas within your paragraphs. And then in the conclusion, make sure to not introduce a new idea, and you should summarize the main points of your paper and restate the purpose of your argument, and always think about what it is I want my reader to walk away remembering from your paper. And if you need additional resources with your introduction or your body paragraphs for this essay, you can always consult the video's debatable thesis and meal plan. One last thing is that I realize in this paper, many of you are going to draw on personal experience and stories to help you prove why an event should be marked. So keep in mind that when you're telling a little story or an anecdote, it needs to have 5 parts to it. Who is in your story? What happens in your story? Where does your story take place? When does the story take place? And why are the events in the story happening? Now, for a real short story, where and when are not always important, and you can often cut them out. The why is sometimes your purpose for telling the story, and sometimes you give the why when you're giving your analysis or explaining the story or the example. But it's always important to make it clear who is in the story and what is happening. So here's an example of how all 5 elements can be included. I'll never forget the day in the summer of 2009 when I was sitting on a park bench having a very frank conversation with God. I didn't want to forgive the person who had hurt me, but I knew God was asking me to. So I have the when, the day of the summer of 2009. I have the who, I and God. I have the where, sitting on a park bench. I have what is happening. We're having a frank conversation. And then kind of the why. I didn't want to forgive the person who had hurt me, but I knew God was asking me to. All right, so for one last note, transitions. I will be looking at that more in this paper than in the others. In fact, it's 10% of your grade. So you may want to review the rubric on page 10 of the syllabus and realize too that you're still being graded on introductions as well in the paper. So to help you with transitions, a list of transition words and phrases are on page 278 through 279 and then 289 in your textbook. And you also have the template for introducing and explaining examples. That's under week 4. All right, so lastly, as you're finishing up your paper proofreading it, remember use the proofreading strategies I talk about in the video. Review your APA formatting, look for spelling, punctuation, grammar, commas, all of those things, and then you will be good to go with your paper. And your code word for this video is fairy.